Good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for September 27th, 2022, around 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about this morning, including Hurricane Ian now beginning to move off the coast of Cuba. We have a significant threat for portions of Florida and the western Florida Peninsula, so let's go and jump straight into everything. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this morning, here's Hurricane Ian now beginning to pull away from Cuba after making landfall last evening. This is now moving into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. We see the very large tail of moisture that is associated with this system. This is actually also entangled now with a cold front. So this is now beginning to move northward today into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, where strengthening is likely. If we look here at the visible satellite imagery this morning, we notice that the storm's core is a little bit disrupted from what it was when it made landfall over portions of the southeastern tip of Cuba yesterday. But we notice that the storm is coming off. It's still very healthy and is firing deep convection around the entire area. We also notice that we have these convective bands now beginning to rotate onshore into portions of southern Florida and southwestern Florida at this time, producing a tornado threat. If we look here at the Key West radar, we notice that we have the core of the cyclone right here over portions of Cuba. This is emerging off here and will be continuing towards the north and eventually bending north and east. And on this forecast track, this is going to cut it very close to portions like Naples and Cedar Key, or I'm sorry, not Cedar Key, but Naples, Cape Coral, Fort Myers. And so there will be tropical storm or perhaps even hurricane conditions to those areas over the next couple of days. And then here over towards portions of Miami and Homestead and Fort Lauderdale, we have these rotating convective bands here dumping a lot of rainfall, causing tornado concerns. We've had a few tornado warnings already this morning, even in portions near Key West. You can see kind of these little cell elements. These are all mini supercells here, and these will continue to produce isolated tornado threats all the way up the peninsula today. If you look at the recon plane that was in there from earlier today, they kind of did something actually unprecedented. They actually did fly over Cuba, which is very rare. I've never seen that happen. But it's good for getting some structural analysis of the cyclone. It has weakened a little bit, of course, from about 947 down here to 957. So that is a little bit of a pressure rise, but we notice that the wind field is beginning to expand as expected, and so tropical storm conditions extend out pretty far now from the circulation compared to just a few days ago, and so this is likely to only continue to expand as we get closer to landfall in Florida. And the other recon plane that's sampling the storm environment now, again, finding that the core is now just about to move over water, and portion of the eye wall is actually over water now. So given that this has about 6 to 12 hours of at least a little bit of inner core recovery work, and then this thing should start to begin to intensify once again and become a Category 4 hurricane, which if we look here on the track forecast from the Hurricane Center at 5 a.m. this morning, we notice again this is expected to become a Category 4 hurricane, moving off towards the north and east, and now shows a very dire situation, a major hurricane landfall somewhere near Tampa on Thursday morning. This will be making landfall as a Category 3 hurricane here, at least on the forecast, continues inland as a hurricane, and then continues to move up the coast here as a decaying cyclone. Again, this will likely bring some significant impacts to even portions of the western Florida Peninsula, Orlando. We do have a hurricane warning that extends all the way down to near Fort Myers and some of those areas. And we do have a tropical storm warning that encompasses most of the area. If we look here at the tropical cyclone watch and warning map here, again, we have a tropical storm watch all the way through Jacksonville at this particular point as tropical storm conditions are possible. We have a tropical storm warning encompassing almost the entire peninsula except for these 3 counties here and portions of southeastern Florida. And then we have a hurricane watch that has been issued for portions of Lake County, Polk County, and back towards the west now, including Sumter and Hernando. We have a hurricane warning that is in effect for the Tampa Bay area southward to about Cape Coral at this particular point. And these are likely to be extended further inland as time goes on. The tropical cyclone risk impact has certainly increased for much of the Florida Peninsula today. We are going now with a high risk of impacts, especially from about kind of the northern part of the peninsula here, south and westward, encompassing most of the western part of the peninsula at this point. So we have a high risk for impacts. This means that you are going to see impacts that are extremely life-threatening, deadly. You could have impacts that could be life-altering, and impacts that certainly leave a mark on the surrounding area for several years yet to come. And this is not to be taken lightly. This is an extremely unprecedented situation that we are dealing with. The rain forecast is a big reason why that the risk is so high. The entire peninsula here is seeing at least 10 inches of rainfall, really from about Lake Okeechobee to about Marion County and Ocala. We notice that there's this little sliver in here now of 20 plus inches of rainfall that could be expected for Pinellas County and near Tampa, and 15 inches of rainfall expected for portions of the western Orlando metro region southward to about Cape Coral and Fort Myers. This is a very real situation based on some of the guidance that we've seen, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Very significant threat here. And then the wind gust forecast here, we can see that, again, generally speaking, most of the peninsula is going to be dealing with these tropical storm force winds at least of 45 miles per hour in gusts. And then we could see wind gusting as high as over 60 miles per hour for portions of central and eastern Orange County, including the Orlando metro. And for some of the outlying Orlando metro regions further back towards the west here, places like Horizons West, places over there towards Walt Disney World, certainly Winter Garden, Oakland, up towards Lake County could see wind gusts topping out about 70 to 75. And then the further west you get into that 80 and 90 mile per hour gusts here that we could be seeing. So we're talking about some very substantial impacts. Today is the day to finish your preparations if you live in these areas, because once we get to tomorrow, all bets are off, and tropical storm and hurricane conditions are likely to begin tomorrow for portions of west central Florida. Now, if you live in the peninsula, especially if you live in Orlando, Lake County, over towards Brevard County and Melbourne, some of those areas up towards Daytona Beach, you do have a little bit more time. And so by tomorrow at 9 a.m., you should be hunkered down and ready to go. Again, we are now starting to be a little bit more concerned that we are going to have heightened wind impacts further inland, because this is not decaying as fast as we first thought. And because it's moving further south, it's a little bit stronger at landfall and coming further inland. So all of these things are contributing to a higher potential of significant wind being extended well inland. The storm surge threat is also the other big issue here. From about Tampa Bay to about Boynton Beach and Charlotte Harbor, 5 to 10 feet above normally dry ground. That is very significant because, again, Tampa Bay, I've been to Tampa several times over the past couple of months, and I have not seen any significant hurricane prep, any significant barriers down there in the Tampa Bay vicinity. And this is a very life-threatening situation. So if you are told to evacuate, you need to evacuate. Understand your evacuation zones. There's plenty of information about that. Just type in your evacuation zone for your particular county or your particular town or city, and you'll get a bunch of information. Again, go off of trusted sources there. And then even all the way towards the Indian Pass and Swanee River, anywhere from about 1 to 4 feet of storm surge. And storm surge even in Key West up to about 2 to 4 feet. Flag alert, Volusia County line up there towards portions of southeastern Georgia, also 2 to 4 feet as well. Very significant life-threatening events taking place for portions of the Tampa Bay area today. If we look at the HWAR forecast for this morning, this is the 060 run here. This does have at least somewhat of a good handle on the initial intensity as this thing comes off here. We notice that this does weaken a little bit. Again, this is to be expected after crossing the western tip of Cuba, but it's very flat through there. Again, this does intensify and gets down here very close to, this is 938 millibars, and we're talking about a storm on this particular run about 120 miles south of Tampa at this point by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. And again, hurricane conditions would likely be beginning in these squalls beginning sometime by early tomorrow morning. And then this continues and basically makes landfall near the Tampa Bay area, bringing with it that storm surge. This would almost be a worst case for Tampa Bay because it's sitting just offshore here and moving towards the northeast. that's pile driving all of this surge into Tampa Bay and forcing it into the residential and business districts, which is very significant. So we could see these storm surge totals be honestly a little bit higher. The HMON forecast, we'll just take a look at this real quickly just to give you some uncertainty here. But either way, I mean, this is, cutting it very close, maybe in Tampa directly or maybe a little bit south. Of course, if it's south of Tampa, you would have less of that surge, but still some very significant heavy rainfall. Either way, it seems like this would be making landfall as a major hurricane, potentially at Category 4 intensity. So you need to be preparing for at least a Category 3, high in Cat 3, low in Cat 4 hurricane after it crosses inland right here. Again, somewhere within this area is the landfall point, and it cannot be overstated that this is going to be a very dangerous situation. But besides the rain, wind, and surge, there's also another threat here, the tornado threat as well. Today, there is a slight risk for severe storms from about Tampa to Melbourne, southward through Fort Myers and Miami, for a 5% tornado risk and a 5% wind risk as well. Again, the 5% tornado risk, this indicates a 5% chance of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of a given point. May not sound like a lot. However, again, most of the tropical tornadoes are actually quite strong. They're very short-lived, hard to warn for, and can pop out virtually out of nowhere. And a 2% tornado risk all the way through the Orlando metro as well. And then we also, on day 2, have a 5% tornado risk now encompassing most of the entire Florida peninsula from Miami all the way through Orange County, Orlando, Tampa, and Melbourne. So all of these areas here would be included in this 5% tornado risk for the next couple of days. And on day 3 here, we continue that with a 5% tornado risk across portions of Orlando, Melbourne, eastward, as this kind of just meanders around the area for several days. There's a tornado watch in effect right now for portions south of Lake Okeechobee and south of Fort Myers, again, for these tropical rain bands producing tornadoes. And these watches will likely be extended northward as we go throughout the next couple of days. Now, again, it is kind of important to note here that there is going to be something happening with the channel today. We are going into a landfall mission mode. So this is the Hurricane Ian live coverage. And this will be the thumbnail that you see here. But we are going into tracking mode and beginning our live field mission later today. Now, initially, we probably will not begin streaming until this evening, probably sometime around 9 or 10 p.m. this evening, as we have to still pick up a couple people. We have to get equipment ready to go and stuff like that. So we will not be streaming during the day because mostly during the day we'll just be doing some, kind of around the, behind the scenes stuff, traveling and whatnot. And then this evening we'll begin the actual cameras and all of the landfall mission stuff. And we'll continue that on for the next several days. So be on the lookout for that sometime this evening. We'll be continuing live coverage around the clock as long as we have, the cell network kind of cooperates and stuff like that. So now would be a good time to, go ahead and support the channel. Channel memberships are open if you guys want to join that. Also Patreon. My goal here is to become completely crowdfunded so I can continue doing these landfall missions and continue my mission of saving lives and property. All right. So that being said, I do hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I will likely talk to you guys again some more this evening around 8 or 9 p.m.